Good afternoon, Boomi fans, and welcome back to Dallas, Texas. We're here at Boomi World 2025. My name's Savannah Peterson. Here with Paul today, bringing you all the fun stories. We're talking platform, we're talking AI, we're talking agents, we're talking about everything.
We certainly are. I mean, the platform is really where it's at, that unified view.
Yeah, yes, it is, baby, and who better to talk to us about that than Chris and Shawn. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Good to be here.
Great to have you back on, Chris, after it's been a few.
It has. I'm super glad to be back.
Yeah, this is going to be super great, and I'm really excited about this conversation because I feel like we're going to distill a little bit of myth from reality, and you know, obviously there's a lot of hype around a lot of what we're doing, and AI and agentic, but I'm curious, since y'all get a pretty frontline view, where are companies actually at in their AI journey? Chris, I'm going to start with you because you got a grin on your face.
I think they go to two. You have a very small percentage, less than 10%. They're like all in, they're making way, they hire the talent, and they're kind of moving, and they're the ones who are like, oh my God, I need a platform. When you talk about agent sprawl, they're like piled up at like the AWS Summit in our booth going, yeah, I hear you guys actually are the first ones with something there. And then you have everyone else who's like, okay, we don't have an AI budget. How do we do this? I get agent, but how does that really meet the road in terms of use cases, and how do I do this and how I solve it? And directly, how do I create business value? I have to do that, otherwise it's not cool. This whole thing of AI party trick to like tell the board we're doing stuff doesn't fly anymore, and that's this moment. And they're like, well, show me the use cases by vertical, by domain. I can go have that, I can have impacts along with my business partner, and if you can do that and do that in a way that works within governance, I'm all in. And that's how the two groups settle out. Now we can hear, Shawn, tell me I'm wrong.
No. I don't know, just give me like, so Shawn, you agree?
Actually, we do a lot of research at my firm on the industry, and what we're seeing is kind of an 80-20 split, 79-21 split. 21% of the people that are doing AI right now have really laid down a very fantastic technology and policy foundation. So they're ready to play. Yeah. And so those folks are the ones that Chris is talking about. They're out there, they're asking the right questions, they're trying to get in the game. The other folks are trying to figure out what to prioritize. They're answering to boards of directors who are like, do we have AI? And they're like, yes, we do. And when you ask the question, at first I thought, I've seen a lot of good slides, and I don't think that holistically across the vendor landscape that all of the vendors are ready. And a lot of them are over-rotating on talking about, we have 10,000 agents.
What does that mean? What's the business outcome?
How are you going to deploy them? How are you going to manage them? How are you going to help your customers stay out of trouble? How are you going to make sure they're performing the way they do? I'm a much bigger fan of the adult version of doing agentic and AI in general, being the adult in the classroom saying, look, we can de-risk your innovation. I think that's valuable.
Yeah,
more
absolutely.
So than hundreds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's also kind of this element of vibe coding and trying to like experimenting and trying things, and then there's practical execution, right? Yeah. And as an analyst, I back everything with data. That's what I do. I just kind of, that's my world. That's what I live in, right? So about 9 months ago, I ran a study, and I said that at 18% of the respondents indicated that they use AI in production workloads. Reran that study 9 months later, jumped up to 54%, right? So a significant jump, right? And then now, if I run it again, I'm sure it's going to be much higher. So I agree with you. I agree that there's kind of experimenting going on. I think that there's also, the pendulum is moving, right? It's shifting. It's moving more towards moving from experimental to production applications. And we're seeing that in the data.
I think there is, but I still think there's one more dimension of kind of that you need to look at maybe and ask. I'd be super interested in what the data said. But what I've seen is a lot of people come out and they're like, yeah, we now have RAG on our knowledge base, internal document, and we got that stuff out. We're helping our service folks get answers faster. All good. Right. And we also have stuff in HR like answer a question or do something like flight trip planner. That's all interesting. No auditor actually cares. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
Yeah.
I have worked with companies where we did like manual journal entries brought into production and doing literally tens of thousands a month being automated. You have to have audit logs. You do have, like, the auditors come in and they're like, show me those logs, show me the transparent AI about why, show me that the data that was brought in was fresh at that moment and it wasn't stale from this system. That's the adult stuff. Like, that's the boring, but that's what has to happen. And if you want to do AI at scale, when you talk to the companies that are doing that and saying, are you using it in a regulated process, which is where the real gains come, I think that's going to drop down to a very small percentage.
I have a quick comment on that, and I think that there's an interesting piece here is pivoting from like the tech stack to like the leadership kind of qualities and what's happening. And when we look at it from that lens, the reason why I think a lot of what you're saying resonates, because the reason why a lot of organizations are saying, hey, we need to do these things, we're going to execute, is because there's a separate AI budget now. There's a budget that's over here, right? And that's not the IT budget, right?
I just shared this with the group. I gave a talk an hour ago. We've got a research piece that was interesting. 37% of boards are telling the ELT, we have money, what do you want to do?
Right.
And I talked to end users about where you're at in the process, and now I'm starting to hear from end users going, yeah, we put the word AI on all of our projects now because then they just get greenlit.
That's right.
And I said, well, if you're smart,
I hadn't heard that.
Oh yeah, you want to hear, folks, all you got to do is just put a little AI on it, and the money comes out of nowhere.
Back in the day when everybody updated their LinkedIn profile and said they were a data scientist, right? It was the same sort of theory. But if you're smart, you're tagging AI to things like data quality projects, data governance projects.
But I think that's valid.
I think so. I think it's a great idea.
Because I don't think people are separating out. Like you did all the projects I did over the last 3 years. We would do the whole studies of value capture and all the different use cases by business process. And then we came out and you would do less than 10% could actually move forward due to data quality.
Honestly, that doesn't surprise me at all, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges that
we're looking for an in 12-month payback due to the huge budgetary crisis, and you're like, can I do that? And I think one of the great things we have about the Boomi platform is I can do really lightweight MDM using agents to clean. I can then go out web services, look at my Moody's ID, I can fill in missing values, I can do data imputation, create the golden records and bring those to bear in that project in a really agile, lightweight way as I'm building out my agents. So data quality is up 10%, good enough for that use case. Another 10, oh my God, 2 more use cases. And I can build quickly. I don't have to wait for this data products on data mesh that's promised in 2 years. It's always 2 years, it's like Fusion. And you're like, okay, when can we do that? And Boomi's platform enables you to do this in a crazy agile way. And I think that data quality aspect is going to be as big as these issues we're doing on governance for AI.
So how do you, so I mean, first of all, that's a wild way to narrow down what you're going to be able to work on and what projects you're going to be able to execute. You know, if it is a data quality problem, how can people solve that? How do you advise, what do you do in that situation?
I think perhaps for the first time, and I've seen it come and go before, but AI might actually be the forcing factor required for people to slam on the brakes, go backwards 2 steps, and solve some of their data quality and data access and orchestration issues. Many analysts have said that before, that BI was going to be the forcing factor and this and that. But because of the autonomous nature of AI, you can't get away with being mostly right. Whereas we can in a BI analytics arena, where if you have most of the data and you're pretty accurate,
plus or minus a little bit,
you can make a business decision. But if you're going to let autonomous or agentic AI go running and doing really cool stuff with your customers or with your inventory, whatever, you better have your act together.
Well, BI gave you a lens into the business. So it showed you what was happening, but it really wasn't, you can take actionable insights from it, but like what's happening with AI and engines now, it's not a tech problem, it's a business problem. And because it's a business problem, it's touching every element, and we're automating along the way. And having a flexible back end in order to adapt dynamically, that bridges the gap between the old and the new. And that's where I think that's where the Boomi platform kind of comes in and goes, okay, well, we can have those connectors, we can have that integration, that's our core foundation, right, for Boomi, but now you have some actionable insights that you can take. It's not just a visual representation of the data, it's actually taking action against the data.
Yeah, no, and I think, we make it so that you can accelerate your processes, reinvent them, and do that, but it's not about using AI. I'm like, because people have said, can I go talk, like, in one of my interviews with customers, and they're like, well, I was like, don't go ask the business how they want to use AI. Like, that's not it. Right. Talk to them what their key problems are, and then you on the tech side, if you can make that run better with AI, that's the use case, and then just do it.
You make it sound so simple, Chris.
He and I had a conversation about this iterative step-by-step motion that you can do with AI, and I paraphrased you today during my speech.
I'm honored.
And I told the room, I said, don't boil the ocean, man. I mean, if you try to over-innovate with this technology, you're going to end up chasing your tail around in circles, and you're not going to come out with where you need to be. Start small, conquer this, conquer that, and build upon it. And I think that's especially interesting as we move from traditional AI, which we all know has been around for a really long time, towards Gen AI, which has some issues, and agentic AI. And I love what we're doing. I just want people to do it in a safe, smart sort of way, and prosper from it.
Because you can start small, and maybe the value capture is not there, but now I'm building trust with the business that this is going to solve it.
Yeah.
Then you do the incremental one. Then you're like, wow, a little bit more trust built, higher value capture, and then you can move that up to then get to the crazy ones where I'm stopping margin leakage, I'm doing this. Like, but you're not going to do that with your first project.
What are some of those practical use cases that you see people deploy successfully first?
Chatbots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I was like,
you know, I think everybody starts with the simple. I think we're moving towards the complex. I see really cool use cases in using unstructured data in environments. I think that's pretty interesting and very easy to get instant ROI from. I think that there's an awful lot of augmenting already nice processes that are rule-based with agent technology in the flow.
I think there's going to be some really interesting stuff
amplifying
there.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the first places you ought to be looking. What are you already doing in your enterprise that would benefit from being amplified with this technology?
That's a great response. And the reason, because I was thinking of a question to ask you, and I think you really kind of just nailed it, which is looking at the audience that's watching this, right? They're asking themselves, where do I get started? There's so much out there. There's so many directions to go. And you just nailed it. Start with the things that you're already doing and make that better. Right, that's what I heard from you.
Yeah, no, optimizing your business is the #1 place to start. Sales and customer interactions is the second place that we see most people going. The third category that people are focusing on is outright innovating, like doing stuff we've always wanted to do, but didn't have the right tech. And the fourth bit is still around privacy, security, and mitigating risk.
Yeah.
And so those are the 4 I see in my research segments. What do you see?
I see that. I've seen a lot over time with matching, like where I'm doing, whether it's trades, you're doing goods receipt, invoice reconciliation, I'm doing manual journal entries. These are things, they stop you from closing the books on time. I have to have a number of accountants based on my high watermark. It slows me from closing the books. And you're like, look, the technology's there, and with an explainable AI, I can actually make those things run really smoothly and auditable.
Don't we all need that?
I know, seriously.
Yeah, so a lot of these manual processes that are building up, they're kind of low value, but you're like, I can now do those in real time continuously with human in loop for the exceptions, and then they can do that continuously and save time. Other class would be some of these systems like in sales. We saw that amazing demo where we automatically, a sales rep could listen to a call, it automatically transcribed the call, built it into a repeat, into a value sheet, looked up this one, we can look at the history of the customers, what they've bought, what they haven't, what would be incremental, and then have all what the products are and then send it out. What that's doing, my best 2 reps are the only ones that ever do that, and they only have time to do it about 4 times a year. So talent and time. This enables your bottom quartile at the end of every call to behaving like your top 2. And now I've taken time and talent and I've just condensed it. And so when you talk to people, whether it's contracts, RFI responses, sales, these are all amazing use cases, and marketing and sales, if they see money, they move, and you can go. And I've seen a lot of uptake in those areas, in addition to the one Shawn was talking about.
All right, I have to ask one question. This is kind of like off what you just said. I really like what you said, but one of the things I hear quite a bit about AI in general and where it's going with regards to skill and talent, right, and skill gap issues. What I'm seeing and what I'm hearing organizations doing is they're not hiring new college hires. They're using AI to do that, like kind of augment the entry-level positions or the new college hire positions. What I see as an analyst, what I see as a risk here is not so much now, But in the next 5 years, we all had a rite of passage, right, where we learned on the job, right, as a new college hire.
And weren't paid a lot, yeah.
Right, and then we learned all that, right? And then so at the end of the day, what happens in 5 years when those organizations are going to look for that skilled talent that are now they haven't had that rite of passage? What's going to happen?
I think that's a challenge. I think it's a fair question, and I think it's where people need to take a look at the future. AI isn't strategic. I can have something that writes code, let's say early co-pilots, they're amazing. What they don't know is to think about, what does this look like from a maintenance whole cycle? What about upgrades? What about minor upgrades, huge ones, HA, DR, all of these advanced things? It's not doing it right side code. That requires an architect to gen code to accelerate and make them better, but they actually have to think that way. And so I think people coming out really need to focus on critical thinking and how do I do that to separate them out, and then using AI as that thing that makes them work faster and makes them work superhuman, but to bring what AI doesn't. And I think that's where the opening is, but the folks aren't doing that. I worry that I have the same concerns, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of interesting. So the Shopify CEO recently came out and said no new hires unless you can prove that AI can't do the job, which was an interesting approach. The idea being that use the tools to augment your human capacity before you're going for more budget on the other side, which is kind of interesting. But the reality is, I think that the jobs of today are not the same as the jobs of 5 years from now. I think that there's a lot of things that will change, and I don't know that that almost looks at human potential as linear. These tools are going to allow us to learn and solve problems in very different ways. I mean, even Luke, who we just had on the set a second ago, his job title didn't exist 1.5 years ago. And there's a lot of people in that boat.
True.
So I think, yeah.
And you didn't say the statement, but you and I both know the quote quite well. AI is not going to take your job. So getting back to the core of your, I'm coming out of college and I might not be able to get a job. It's people that know how to apply and utilize AI.
I like that response.
And so I know it's a little kind of, it's being overused right now, but it's also accurate. And
it is.
You look at, I heard a fun example about a CSM agent recently, you know this story, and the CSM team within the company got a little panicky and thought they were being replaced. And they said, no, this is a resource for you to leverage to do your jobs faster, better, smarter. So shying away from AI because you're afraid of it is not a good idea.
Right.
If you're young and you're coming out of college and you're having a hard time breaking in, you need to show up with an AI skill set.
I like that.
I do think it's a little overblown. We started out writing assembly, and then all of a sudden you had, okay, I can actually write, I can write imperative code. No one said jobs are being lost. Right. And then we went to imperative code, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's great. Now I'm not writing in C and doing this. I don't have to understand the computer's architecture to write good stuff. No one was like, jobs are being lost. And now we're saying all of a sudden Copilot, and everyone's screaming. And you're like, well, no. It's just the continual march, and you have to, and everyone's going to be adapting moving forward.
Absolutely. All right, final question for you both, and I'm actually really curious to hear what you both have to say to this. When we're at Boomi World 2026, because we're not letting you go as long as you went last time without being on the show,
right.
What do you all hope to be able to say then that you can't yet say today?
I want to talk about the maturity that we're going to see in the market. So I want to go from everybody's got great slides to everybody's doing really cool work. I know that I told the room I was in an hour ago, the next time I'm here, I'm going to talk to you about multi-agent chains of logic. I'm going to talk to you about, agent swarms that are doing all kinds of really cool work. We're not there yet, but that's what makes it fun. The final bit I'll give you is I'm upset that I'm as old as I am at this point with this cool tech. This should have come around when I was 25. What the heck? I'm closer to the end of my analyst career than the beginning, and I just find this so fascinating. I think it's a great topic.
It is fascinating.
I'm looking right now, everyone's looking at how do I take my existing processes and improve on them. And what I'm looking for is to say, why are we still doing it that way? And to start looking at the use cases, I want to see them doing it Boomi and say, we thought about this and we thought about what were we really trying to solve for, and solving it in new ways, and then talking about that on stage with them. That's what I'm like, if I could do that next year, I'd be the happiest guy ever.
Well, we look forward to helping amplify that message when you can do that next year. That's the goal. Shawn and Chris, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
This has been a joy, and thank you, Paul, as always. And thank all of you for tuning in to our 2 days of coverage here at Boomi World 2025 in Dallas, Texas. My name's Savannah Peterson. You're watching theCUBE, the leading source for enterprise tech news.